Have you ever looked back on a relationship and thought, how did I not see it? Maybe your friends saw the red flags. Maybe your family saw them. Maybe, if you're being completely honest, you saw them too. You noticed the canceled plans, the conversations that never went anywhere, the words that didn't quite match the actions, the uneasy feeling in your stomach that you couldn't explain, and yet you stayed. Not because you were naive, not because you weren't smart, because attraction has an incredible way of changing the color of the warning signs. I don't actually think most of us ignore red flags. I think we repaint them. We soften them. We explain them until bright red slowly becomes pink. And today, I want to introduce you to a concept that completely changed the way I understand relationships. I call them pink flags. Because sometimes the biggest mistakes we make isn't missing what our intuition is trying to tell us. It's convincing ourselves it meant something else. Welcome back to Smile Sessions. I'm your host, Christina Perry. And this is the podcast where we discuss ways to live healthier, happier, and more fulfilling lives. I'm so grateful you're here. Over the past few weeks, we've been diving deeper into the ideas from my new book, Stop Disappearing: How to Start Choosing Yourself Without Guilt or Fear. These episodes aren't about reading the book to you. They're about having conversations that happen after you've closed the book. Last week, we talked about becoming someone's emotional rehabilitation center. Today, we're taking a step back and asking an even bigger question. Why do we ignore the things our intuition already knows? Because here's what I've learned. The biggest relationship mistakes I've made weren't because I couldn't see the truth. They happened because I kept explaining the truth away. Physical chemistry is incredibly powerful. Powerful enough to make red flags look pink, and a pink flag look like nothing at all. Maybe you've experienced this. Someone says something that doesn't sit right with you. You notice they avoid certain conversations. They disappear for a few days. Their actions don't quite line up with their words. And instead of stopping, you start explaining. He's just stressed. She's been hurt before. They're probably overwhelmed. They've just never met the right person. We become our own public relations department. We smooth over the rough edges. We write a story that makes staying feel easier than questioning. Does that sound familiar? I know it does for me, because I've done it. One of the biggest myths I want to challenge today is people think smart people don't end up in unhealthy relationships. That's simply not true. Intelligence doesn't protect us from emotional attachment. Sometimes it actually makes us better at rationalizing behavior that shouldn't be rationalized. We don't just notice patterns. We explain them. We analyze them. We become detectives trying to solve another person's emotional puzzle. Instead of asking, is this relationship healthy? We ask, what happened to them? Instead of asking, do I feel emotionally safe? We ask, how can I help them feel emotionally safe? Do you notice the shift? The focus quietly moves away from us and onto fixing them. That's where pink flags begin. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening inside your body. Because once I understood this, everything changed. Every text message, every compliment, every unexpected phone call, every moment of affection. Your brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical. Dopamine loves anticipation. It loves uncertainty. It keeps you coming back for one more conversation, one more date, one more chance. Then comes oxytocin, the bonding hormone, especially after physical affection and intimacy. Oxytocin whispers, "This feels safe. This is connection. This is someone to hold on to." Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is, biology wasn't designed for modern dating. It can't tell the difference between someone who's emotionally available and someone who's emotionally inconsistent. It simply responds to the signals, which is why I want you to remember this sentence. Attraction is not a character reference. Oxytocin is not a love story. Chemistry tells you that you're connected. It doesn't tell you whether the relationship is healthy. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is that our bodies often recognize misalignment long before our minds are willing to admit it. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt off? Nothing dramatic happened. Nothing obvious. But something inside you tightened. Maybe your chest felt heavy. Maybe your stomach sank. Maybe you just couldn't explain it. So you ignored it. You called it anxiety. You called it overthinking. You called yourself dramatic. But what if it wasn't any of those things? What if it was awareness? One of my favorite lines from the book is this: if you have to explain it away, your body already knows. Our intuition rarely screams, it whispers. And every time we ignore that whisper, it becomes a little quieter. Not because it disappeared, because we've trained ourselves not to listen. I can't talk about this without sharing one of the hardest stories I've ever written, because I didn't miss my own pink flags. I saw them. I acknowledged them. And I still stayed. A month before my wedding, I came home from my bachelorette weekend in Miami. The moment I walked through the front door, I felt it. Nothing looked different, but everything felt different. My fiancé had completely shut down emotionally. He was distant, closed. Something was clearly happening with his business, but he wouldn't let me in. I remember standing there thinking, how am I about to marry someone who won't open up to me? That wasn't fear. That wasn't anxiety. It wasn't cold feet. It was clarity. My body recognized something my heart didn't want to accept. And almost immediately, another voice stepped in. He's just stressed. It's temporary. Don't overreact. I took a red flag, painted it pink, and then eventually convinced myself there wasn't a flag at all. A few days later, I had a complete breakdown at work. Someone asked me a simple question about wedding plans, and I completely fell apart. The director of care took me into the boardroom. I sat there crying, not because I was overwhelmed with wedding plans, because somewhere deep inside, I knew something wasn't right. She gave me honest advice, grounded advice, loving advice, and I didn't take it because I had already committed, not just to him, to the story, to the wedding, to the future I'd already imagined. I told myself, these are just nerves. But looking back, they weren't nerves. It was misalignment trying to get my attention. Then came my wedding day, October 15th, 2011. Standing at the back of the church with my father. Everything was ready. The guests had arrived. The music had started. I looked at him and quietly said, I think I'm going to throw up. For years, I told myself those were butterflies. Today, I know they weren't. They were clarity. My body knew, long before I trusted myself enough to listen. 4 years later, we separated. But the lesson didn't begin with the separation. The lesson began at the back of that church. One thing I've realized is that we don't stay because we enjoy suffering. We stay because of the stories we tell ourselves. If I leave now, I've wasted so much time. We've already planned the wedding. What will everyone think? Maybe it'll get better. Hope is beautiful, but hope without evidence can become a trap. Sometimes we're not in love with the relationship. We're in love with the future we've imagined. And those are two very different things. Sometimes I imagine the woman I am today standing beside the woman I was at the back of that church. I imagine putting my hand on her shoulder and saying, "Christina, you already know. Trust yourself." I wonder how many moments in our lives our future selves are quietly trying to get our attention. Not with shame, not with fear, but with truth. Maybe your future self is speaking to you today. Maybe she's asking you to stop explaining away what you've been feeling for months, or maybe even years. So this week, I'd love for you to sit with a few questions. Where have I been overriding myself? Where have I been explaining things away? What have I felt but refused to admit? Am I listening to my intuition or arguing with it? You don't need to make any big decisions today. Just notice. Awareness is where healing begins. I want to leave you with this. Chemistry is exciting, but clarity is what protects you. Your instincts aren't trying to ruin your love story. They're trying to protect your peace. The relationship you're rebuilding may not be with another person. It may be with yourself. Every time you listen to that quiet voice instead of arguing with it, you rebuild trust. Every time you honor what your body already knows, you choose yourself. And that's what Stop Disappearing has always been about. Not becoming someone new, but finally listening to the person you've been all along. Thank you so much for spending time with me. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever experienced a pink flag? Have you ever looked back and realized that your body knew something your mind wasn't ready to accept? If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to Smile Sessions so you don't miss another episode in our Stop Disappearing series. If you'd like to go even deeper into these ideas, you can find my book, Stop Disappearing: How to Start Choosing Yourself Without Guilt or Fear, using the link in the description below. Until next time, take care of yourself. Trust yourself. And remember, if you have to explain it away, your body already knows. Don't be so quick to paint it pink. I'm Christina Perry, and this has been another session for your soul.